Hi, everyone. We are the Peru group from D-Lab's Gender and Development class, and our project is called Gender Analysis Framework for Remote Mining Communities in Puno, Peru. So in summary, our project is essentially in partnership with UTech students, and we've created a gender analysis framework and data collection instruments to gain an understanding of gender equity in remote mining communities in Puno, Peru. So our team members are myself included, Betty. We have David, who couldn't be with us today, and also Jimin and Nurali. So first, I'll give a quick introduction to the project with a lot of context that are necessary for our gender framework. So artisanal and small-scale gold mining in Peru is a very prominent ancestral activity, and this is the primary activity that we will be analyzing. So Parakeo is an ancestral practice of finding stones that are not accepted in the gold mines that contain residual gold, and paraqueas is the term to describe the women who work in this field. And these miners often participate in such work not because it is a desirable line of work, rather because they lack the employment opportunities locally, and often there's a potential for higher wages. And the location of interest is in Puno, Peru, and specifically it's La Rinconada. And essentially it's this community or permanent settlement that is 5,100 meters above sea level, and it is one of the highest permanent settlements in the world. And to give a little bit more context through statistics, 17% of the total gold production in Peru is located here in Puno, and 33% of the total number of miners in Peru are also located here. So more specifically, we wanted to look at the women who are in this informal sector of gold mining. And essentially, they experience gender-based economic violence because of different sets of standards, barriers, such as norms or laws, as well as other cultural aspects that are posed for women. And this violence impacts many aspects of their lives, including income, health, and quality of life. And so we identified a few problems that are important to develop our gender framework. The first one is that women are marginalized in low-level economic activities considered non-central to the mining. And so these women are often working in the periphery of the actual mining activity, in that it's very informal. They only get access to the gold that is residual from their male counterparts, and they experience a lack of invisibility and lack of opportunity, where a lot of the times when they do find gold, the yield in terms of income is much lower. And they also have a lack of proper equipment, because equipment is designed for men, and often these women don't have money to afford these equipment. So they're subject to a lot of health problems, such as exposure to mercury, and that can then affect their children.
Just expanding on what we're trying to do, and we're trying to develop a gender analysis framework for artisanal and small-scale gold mining communities in Peru. And what is gender analysis is the effort to understand relationship between different groups in a community and understand the constraints that they face relative to each other. We're trying to get information on the 4 quadrants that I mentioned here. Beliefs and knowledge is about women and men's confidence and awareness of power, access of resources that women and men face relative to each other, then practices which are informal cultural norms or customs that determine roles of men and women in a society, and legal rights, which is formal institutions, policies, and laws that men and women have that are given by the state. We're looking at both formal and informal access of power, knowledge, practices, and legal rights that are available to both of them. Before starting the process of developing the gender analysis, did a bunch of desk research to see what literature is out there studying the artisanal mining communities in general and also specifically in Peru. Some of our findings from this research re-emphasized what we had already identified as a problem through the effort through the DLAB project that was given to us, and sort of solidified the approach and the need for gender analysis. Basic findings from research on gender and mining are that women do play a very, very significant role in this sector, with 30 and sometimes 50% of workforce in the sector is made up of women. In spite of that, women face a lot of challenges of low wages, poor safety, lack of resources, recognition because of their gender. And this is across a lot of other countries where ASGM is a big sector. Women's participation in ASM sector has also been relegated to passive jobs, which has resulted in them having little to no power in decision making. Specifically in Peru, there's exclusion of women from digging beneath the rocks due to a superstitious beliefs, and what that does is leads women to only scramble onto the piles that are discarded by men, making it even harder for them to make any money out of this process and this employment. Women also face extreme health hazards, as Betty spoke about, because of mercury exposure, and also have to resort to living in very, very unhealthy living conditions, and which is because of their proximity to the mining sites. And this also leads to this is because a lot of mining waste is also dumped around where they live, making their children and themselves breathe in really unhealthy environment. There's also very, very heavy vulnerability of young women to shootings, which is sort of often done in the process of sex trafficking and trafficking of young women into brothels. And this is a very, very known practice that unfortunately still in place in Peru. And one silver lining out of this analysis was that women in Peru, pelequeras in Peru, finally got recognition in 2018 as of their work after 6 years of advocacy. And this was given by the Minister of Mining, which does open doors in the future to formalize the sector with keeping the roles that women play in the sector at heart of it.
So the objectives of our gender analysis is to understand gender roles, power dynamics, social norms, and practices with regards to the this mining value chain, and to understand the economic gender-based violence. How is it employed against women, small-scale miners, as a means for controlling the gold value chain? In this process, we pay particular attention to the access and cultural profile in the community and women's triple role in reproductive, productive, and community managing activities. These two aspects are included in Harvard and Morsey analysis framework. So we combine those two frameworks to make the framework of our own. So Harvard framework aims to help planners design more efficient projects and improve overall productivity by mapping the work and resources of men and women in a community and highlighting the main differences. It consists of a series of grids to connect data and organize information, along which the access and control profile enables users to list what resources people use to carry out the tasks identified in the previous grid. It indicates whether women or men have access to resources, who controls their use, and who controls the benefits of households or communities' use of resources. And the next framework that I'm going to introduce here is the Morse framework, which aims to set up gender planning as a type of planning in its own right. This framework identifies the gender rules and then plan to balance the triple rule of women. Users of the framework are asked to examine whether a program will increase the women's workload in one of her roles or to the detriment of her other roles. So in our own framework, we are going to analyze women's access and control to the assets and the resources. Next. And women's if social norms, beliefs, perceptions, or the laws and regulations enable or constrain women's practice. More than one dimensions are included in our analysis, including individual level, household level, and community level to include the analysis of women's triple rule. The question on the right in each row prompts users to consider which specific aspects we are going to include, and we will refine this grade according to our context. It's done.
So moving forward, we have a few more steps that are to be carried out, and due to COVID-19, our designed research instruments can't be carried out until March of 2022, but we have designed 2 to 3 research instruments to be able to gain insight into varying aspects of these women in mining and their stories, as well as the challenges they face. In the framework that we just presented, there are a lot of questions that prompt us to discover different aspects that are important to understand how these women are, like what barriers that these women face. And so we designed key informant interviews. So this was actually conducted today, where our instructor, Libby, interviewed Victor from Alliance for Responsible Mining, someone who is very knowledgeable about the Puno context. And so from this information, we are able to gain a lot more insight into how we can analyze how these women's agency or their quality of life can be improved. Our second research instrument is a survey. And essentially, we first identified key themes to be able to capture all the different things we want to learn from these women. And so we chose to do a survey just because from learning about what the women are like in the mining communities in Peru, we have learned that they're not people who love just to like telling everyone their stories. And so it might take a while for us to get to know them before perhaps conducting a focus group. And so a survey is a good preliminary first step to gaining this information. And the last research instrument so far is a hair sample analysis. As all of us have previously mentioned, mercury exposure is a big problem. And so we thought it would be really interesting to be able to get some hair samples from the women as well as their children to test for mercury existence. And that can shed light on a lot of the health hazards that they are exposed to. And so the steps forward are to use this collected data from our research instruments to complete the gender analysis. We designed our Frankenstein gender analysis framework based on collaboration with UTech students, as well as extensive research. So we hope that when this information and data can be collected, this framework will be helpful in kind of identifying specific barriers to women's development in these mining communities, as well as shedding light on some actionable suggestions forward to helping these women. Thank you.